Well, good morning. This is me, Ma. Today I wanted to share with you what God taught me about divorce and how He taught me to learn to love my husband. So I want to make you understand where my marriage was at this time. Fred was a handsome man, and whenever he had on his suit and tie, he was good looking. He had a great reputation. He had a wonderful personality, and he was a man of character, and he had a $1 million watt smile, and he knew everybody in Savannah, so I should have been happy, right? Well, unfortunately, the things that the people didn't know was the anger that he had built up in him from all the things I shared with you last week about so many people that he loved had died. And really and truly, after years of being married, I looked back on it and I saw that he was angry with God, was the reason that he had such anger built up in him, but I didn't know it at the time. And so because of that, he was a perfectionist. He would explode over nothing, and I see now, looking back, that the things that he demanded of me and those that were around him and the people that worked for him was things that made him look good. If it didn't make him look good, well, then he was upset about that. And he was not good at expressing his thoughts and feelings with me. And so a lot of times I felt unloved and I felt very disillusioned. So my self-esteem had completely eroded by this point. And so that's where I was, and that's where we were. And I've told you how the devil, our enemy, had come in to tempt me with somebody else being interested in me when my husband didn't appear to be interested in me. And it could so easily have tempted me into having an affair or leaving my husband. But with God's help, I overcame that temptation. And I didn't really understand still that the devil was our enemy. And so I was ignorant of Satan's devices. So the devil began to plant thoughts in my head. You don't have to put up with this. You know, he doesn't love you. Why don't you get a divorce? And of course, you know, you think those thoughts are your thoughts because, you know, you are unhappy. He always attacks us in our weakest points. And this was my weak point because I didn't feel loved and appreciated. But I had been in Sunday school now. I was teaching the Sunday school class. I was a Christian. I was trying my best to serve the Lord. But I was thinking about getting a divorce. And but since I've been reading my Bible, I thought, well, why don't I look up and see what the Bible says about divorce? There wasn't anybody I could ask about divorce because I didn't want my parents or my sisters to think that things were any worse than what they could observe for themselves because Fred erupted in front of them too. So I didn't want to tell them. And I certainly couldn't tell his folks, you know. And I didn't have marriage counselors. There was no Christian bookstores where you could go and find a how-to book to save your marriage or whatever. And so I thought, okay, the only thing I know to do is, I began to pray about it. And I went to my concordance. You couldn't take one of your cell phones then and put in divorce and get immediate answer. So I'm talking about it took me, you know, a week to find out what I'm trying to tell you now. But anyway, I got out my Bible and the first thing I read was God hates divorce. Well, I didn't know he hated divorce. And I thought, well, if he hated it back then, he doesn't change. So if he hated it then, he still hates it. And then I read in the Gospels where that because of men's hardness of their hearts, God allowed them to get a divorce. But back in those days, it was the men that were getting a divorce, not the women. And he said it was only because of the hardness of their heart, because he intended that we live together. And and he said that if you left anybody except for adultery, you would be committing adultery, and anybody that married you would be committing adultery. Well, I didn't want that either. So, but I kept on digging. And I'm not trying to condemn anybody for getting a divorce because, hey, if I hadn't been in the Bible like I was, I might have ended up getting a divorce. And that divorce is not the unpardonable sin. I want you to understand. I'm just talking to you about what God taught me about divorce. And so then I found another scripture, and it says, if the believer wants to depart, let him depart. So a brother or sister is not under bondage in any case. And so I thought, oh boy, I found it. I found the solution to my problem, because Fred was an unbeliever, and now then if he wanted to go, I would be free. And so just about the time I was rejoicing and getting all excited about this, then the Lord spoke to me. And I don't want to be super spiritual for all you people that don't know what I'm talking about when I say God spoke to me. The thought came into my mind, and I know I didn't put it there. He said, but you can't run him off. He said a woman can run a man off if she wants to. All you got to do is quit treating him like he's somebody special. Refuse him in the bed, be ugly to him, and pretty soon you can run somebody off. I don't care who you are, you can run somebody off if you're ugly enough. So he said I couldn't run him off. Well, that really put a damper on that one. So I kept on reading though. And in 1 Corinthians 7:13, I'm going to read you this because I don't want you to take my word for anything. This is what the word says. In 1 Corinthians 7:13 it says, and a woman who has a husband who does not believe, if he is willing to live with her, let her not divorce him. Okay? For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but now they are holy. Well, what in the world does all of that mean? He's sanctified by me, and my children would be unclean? Well, I mean, that really worried me. I didn't have any children, but I certainly didn't. If I ever had any, I didn't want them to be unclean. And so I thought, okay, so, but still, I would be free if he decided to go. So, anyway, and then I complained to the Lord when I read that. I mean, it's kind of sounded pretty much to me like I was going to have to live with Fred. So I was complaining. And I said, but Lord, Fred just doesn't love me. And he says, Fred loves you as much as he's capable of loving anybody. Now you teach him how to love. I got to teach Fred how to love? My goodness, I don't even know how to love, Lord. And he said, you got that right. So, I thought, okay, well, let me go and find out. I got to teach Fred how to love. I better find out how to love myself. So I knew that 1 Corinthians 13 was the love chapter. At least I'd learned that much. So I go to 1 Corinthians 13 and I started reading, and it says, it's in 1 Corinthians, let me turn there, I'm sorry. 1 Corinthians 13. Though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but I have love, I'm nothing. Okay? And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Love suffers long and is kind. I got to suffer long and be kind. Love does not envy. I didn't have that problem. Love does not parade itself. Love is not puffed up. And puffed up to me means to pout, and I was pretty good at pouting, y'all. I have to admit that. Does not behave rudely. Well, I'm guilty of that, Lord. Does not seek its own. Well, I got to admit, I seek my own too. Is not provoked easily. Oh my goodness. Well, I was certainly provoked easily. And thinks no evil. Does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. And then I also read that love covers a multitude of sins. So, folks, I'm going to tell you something. I was a long way from practicing love in my marriage. So I read all this, and I knew that God had given me a real tall order that I was going to have to put into practice. And you know, I still believe in that saying, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And so I knew that I had to obey this if I was going to be pleasing to God. Not necessarily pleasing to Fred, but to be able to do this, I was going to have to be pleasing to God. I was going to have to do all of these things. So anyway, and then, while I was still reading about marriage and divorce, I read in 1 Peter 3, it says, likewise, you wives, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your chaste conduct, accompanied by fear. Well, it said I was supposed to be submissive, and it also said that by my conduct, that maybe Fred would get saved. And at this point, I mean, if I got to live with him, I'd already made up my mind that my happiness depended on me, not on him. And if I had to live with him, then I was going to have to start practicing love. And I was going to, hopefully that by my conduct, that Fred would get saved. Well, when I started putting these into practice, things changed. Now, the only thing that I had any counsel that I had was from the Ladies' Home Journal. Can this marriage be saved? And it was his viewpoint, her viewpoint, and then the counselor's viewpoint. And so in there I read, it said that if you're feeling unloved and unappreciated, that probably your mate is feeling the same thing. And I thought, okay, that's how I felt, unloved and unappreciated. So it said to try something different. Meet your husband with a kiss when he comes home. Fix him his best meal, you know, not for any reason except that you love him. So I thought, well, what's it going to hurt? So when Fred walked in that night, after I'd read this and decided to put all this into practice, I met him at the door. I had my hair combed and I looked nice, and I met him at the door and I kissed him hello. And he looked like, well, what in the world's going on with you? You know, I mean, like, what to expect from this? And so then we had a lovely meal, and we just I talked with him, you know, and made conversation, tried to make myself interesting so that he'd want to hear what I had to say. And so that was a great evening. We had a wonderful evening. Well, the next day, I met him at the door with a kiss again. And from that time on, we never parted that we didn't kiss each other hello and goodbye. And we never went to bed angry. I never did that because I knew that before I ever started reading my Bible. Now, I got to admit, there was one night when we didn't go to sleep that night at all, but that's another story. But anyway, for the most part, when I changed, Fred changed. And so that was a good thing that come out of all of this. And so I pray that what I've shared with you today has given you some food for thought, and that God will tell you to love and to treat your mate with love and respect and admiration. So I hope you'll continue to join me next week on my journey with the Lord. Thank you. So listen, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.